The room was silent, except for the low hum of the ship. It was a soft, musical sound, not like the deep groan of human engines. Myra sat very still. Her hands were folded in her lap, pale against the dark gray of her simple jumpsuit. Across the wide, round table, Ambassador Kyler shifted his feathers. They made a gentle rustling sound, like leaves in a breeze. He was tall and thin, with large, dark eyes that held a calm intelligence. This was the moment. First contact. For weeks, the signals had been exchanged. Mathematical concepts. Pictures of star systems. Peaceful greetings. It had all been very slow, very careful. Now, Myra and her partner Tay were here, aboard the Galactic Concorde's diplomatic ship, the Harmonic Accord. They had arrived in a small, unmarked shuttle. It now sat in the landing bay. Looking small and plain, Tay sat beside Myra. He was trying not to stare at the other beings in the room. Besides Kaler, there were two others. One had skin like polished stone, with faint patterns that seemed to move. The other was small and furry, with large ears that twitched towards every sound. They were all members of the Concorde, an alliance of species that valued peace and knowledge above all else. "We are deeply honored," Mira said. Her voice was picked up by the small device on the table. After a moment, it spoke in a flowing, chirping language. Kaler's head tilted. "The honor is shared." His translated voice came back, smooth and warm. "Your approach was precise. Your communications clear. You are not what we often find on the edge of known space." "What do you often find?" Tay asked. His curiosity got the better of his nerves. Kaler's large eyes blinked slowly. "Noise, chaos, sometimes danger. Species who shout before they listen. You listened." The meeting continued like this. They spoke of harmless things. They compared notes on the chemistry of a nebula visible from the viewport. Mira shared a recording of Earth's ocean waves. Kaler played a harmonic frequency from his home world's crystal forests. It was all very calm, very safe. Myra watched everything. She watched how Kaler's aides moved, how they interacted. She noted the lack of guards, the open design of the ship. There were no visible weapons, no heavy blast doors. The Concorde's peace was not just an idea. It was in their architecture. It made her feel both calm and strangely tense. After an hour of talk, one of the aides brought in a tray. On it were small cups of a steaming liquid. It smelled of flowers and something like cinnamon. Kaler took a cup. "A gesture of trust," he said. "A shared drink." Mira met Tay's eyes for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled, took a cup, and sipped. The taste was sweet and warm. Tay did the same. The tension in the room eased even more. The furry alien made a soft chittering sound that the translator called a laugh. "You are curious about us," Kaler stated. "Your questions are careful. May I ask one of you?" "Of course," Myra said. "Your history." "Your spacefaring history is short, our long-range scans suggest. Yet your technology for quiet communication, for precise jumps, it is advanced. How did you achieve this so quickly?" It was the question Mira had expected. She had practiced the answer. "Our world had many conflicts," she said, choosing her words with care. "For a long time, we fought each other. It was wasteful. It cost us much. When we finally looked to the stars together, we made a choice. We would focus not on how to break things, but on how to build connections. How to listen. Our early ships were fragile. We learned to be quiet, to be careful, to observe before we acted. It was the only way to survive our own neighborhood." Kaler's feathers ruffled in a way that seemed to indicate deep thought. A painful lesson, but a wise one. The Concorde was formed for similar reasons. Many voices, one purpose, to understand and to preserve understanding. He seemed pleased. This was going perfectly, just as the simulations had predicted. "We would like to invite you," Collar said, his voice taking on a formal tone, "to travel with us to one of our primary outposts. Epsilon 7. There you could meet more of our people. We could share knowledge. You could see the peace we have built." Myra placed her cup down gently. "We would be honored to accept your invitation, Ambassador." Her heart was beating steadily. This was the next step. The formal part of the meeting began to wind down. Kaler and his aides showed them a map of the local sector, pointing out peaceful research stations and garden worlds. There was no talk of borders, of defenses, of threats. Tay asked detailed questions about the native life forms on these worlds. His face lit with a pure scientific joy. As they talked, Mira let her gaze drift to the large main viewport. The stars were sharp and clear here, far from any sun. Her own shuttle looked like a gray pebble against the elegant curves of the Concorde ship. Somewhere out there, in all that dark quiet, other things were moving. She knew it. The Concorde, in its peaceful bubble, might not think about them often, but Terrans always did. It was in their blood now. After the meeting, Mira and Tay were given a room for their rest period before the journey. It was comfortable, with soft lights and a surface like grass to walk on. Once the door was shut, Tay let out a long breath. "They're real," he whispered, grinning. "They're exactly like the profiles said. They're—" "Good, they are," Myra agreed, sitting on a low bench. "But their goodness is fragile, Tay. It's built on never having been truly tested. You think they're naive?" "I think they're lucky," Mira corrected. "And we must be very careful not to break what they have." Tay nodded, his smile fading a little. "The offer to go to the outpost. It's a big step." "It's the necessary step," Myra said. She walked to a small terminal in the wall. It was a Concorde system, offering access to basic public records, cultural files, stellar maps. She did not touch it. Instead, she took a small, flat device from her pocket. It was smooth and black. She pressed her thumb to it. A tiny light glowed green. She typed a short message with quick taps. Contact proceeding. Status, green. En route Epsilon 7 with hosts. She held the device up. It gave a soft ping of confirmation. The message was sent. A tight, low-power beam aimed at a specific empty point of space far behind their current position. To any Concorde sensor, it would look like minor instrument feedback, a tiny burst of harmless static. "Signal sent," she said, putting the device away. "Do you think it's really necessary to have them out there?" Tay asked, looking towards the viewport, as if he could see through the ship's hull. Mira's face was calm, but her eyes were the eyes of someone who has read too much history. "First contact was calm, Tay," she said softly. "But the universe is not. We will hope for the best. But we will not be foolish. We will speak softly. And we will have our big stick waiting in the shadows, just in case. Now, get some rest. We have a piece to learn about." Tay lay down on the soft surface, looking up at the ceiling. Mira remained seated, watching the stars through their small viewport. The harmonica chord hummed its gentle, peaceful song. And far away, in the silent dark where the Concorde sensors saw nothing, space rippled faintly for just a second, then was still again. The journey to Outpost Epsilon 7 was smooth and quiet. The Terran shuttle, now docked inside the belly of the harmonica chord, was a silent passenger. The Concorde ship moved with a graceful speed, its engines making less noise than a Mira, and Tay were given the freedom to move through the ship's common areas. They walked through wide hallways with soft, glowing walls. They saw aliens of many kinds going about their work. Everyone moved without hurry. There were no shouts, no alarms. It was the most peaceful place either human had ever been. A new Concord delegate joined them for most of the trip. Her name was Una. She was from a species with smooth, blue-gray skin and large, luminous eyes that showed her every emotion. She was a xenopologist, a student of other cultures. She was fascinated by the two Terrans. "Your body language is so restrained," Una said to Tay as they sat in an observation lounge. Stars streaked by the large window like slow trails of light. "You give away very little. Is this a Terran trait?" Tay smiled slightly. "On our world, there are many cultures. Some are very expressive. Some are not. In situations like this, it is considered polite to watch and learn first." "A wise custom," Una said, her eyes brightening. "The Concord values patience above haste. It prevents misunderstandings." Myra listened from a few steps away, watching the stars. She was learning the rhythm of this ship, the patterns of its crew. Everything had a purpose, and every purpose was peaceful. It was beautiful. It also felt like a bubble, floating in a very dark ocean. Later, Una showed them a map of the sector on a large, floating display. Green dots marked Concord outposts and member worlds. "This is the garden of our civilization," she said with clear pride. "Places of learning and sharing." Tay leaned in, pointing to a vast, empty area on the edge of the map. "And this region? It is unmarked." Una's expression shifted. The light in her eyes dimmed just a little. "That is unclaimed space, beyond our peaceful borders. We do not go there often." "It is noisy? Noisy?" Myra asked, turning from the window. "There are species there who do not share our values," Una said, choosing her words carefully. "They are harvesters. They see a planet not as a living thing full of wonder, but as a collection of parts to be taken. They see other beings as tools, or as obstacles." A cold silence settled in the lounge. Tay's scientific curiosity was now mixed with something else. Concern. "Have they ever come into Concord space?" "Sometimes," Una admitted. "A scout. A probe. When they see our strength of unity, when they hear our voice, they usually turn away. They seek easier meals. Our peace is protected by our collective will. It is a light too bright for their shadows." She said it with conviction, but Myra heard something underneath. A hope, not a certainty. What if their shadow is bigger than your light one day? Mira asked softly. Una looked at her, the human's calm face unreadable. "Then we would speak louder. We would show them the error of their ways with reason. Violence is a failure of communication." She paused. "You think this is naive?" "I think it is brave," Myra corrected, "and very, very precious. On Earth, we have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst." Una considered this. "What does the worst look like for Terrans?" Myra's gaze returned to the starfield. "A silent sky," she said simply. It was not the whole answer, but it was true enough. The conversation moved to safer topics after that. Una explained the bioluminescent art of her people. Tay explained Terran music. But the seed had been planted. That night, in their assigned quarters, Tay was quiet. "Harvesters," he finally said. She made it sound like a natural disaster. Like a storm. Not like an enemy. To them, it might be the same thing, Myra said. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her small black device in her hand. "They don't think in terms of war and enemies. They think in terms of harmony and noise. It's a different way of seeing the universe." "It's a better way," Tay said, a little sadly. "It is," Myra agreed. "But is it a stronger way?" She didn't expect an answer. She activated the device. A small holographic log appeared. It was a status report. A single line of text glowed. Guardian on station. Drift protocol active. All systems nominal dot. She closed the log. They're out there, following, watching. Do you ever wish we could just be like them? Tay asked, looking at the gentle light of the room. Just come as we are, with open hands and no shadows? Mira looked at her friend, a scientist whose only weapon was curiosity. Every day, Tay. But we are not them. Our history is written in blood they have never had to spill. Our hands may be open, but we remember how to make fists. We must remember, for their sake as much as ours. The next day, Una took them to the ship's garden dome. It was full of alien plants, smelling of sweet perfumes. It was there, surrounded by growing things, that the first tremor hit Dot. It was not a physical shake. It was on the screens. A soft alarm chimed. A crew member nearby, a being with stone-like skin, looked at a console. Long-range sensors. A minor subspace ripple. Bearing. Aft. Probably a micro-debris collapse in the dark layer. Nothing of concern. Una nodded, untroubled. It happens. The universe sighs in its sleep. Mira and Tay exchanged a glance. They knew what human-made cloaking systems looked like on sensors when they adjusted their position. A tiny, almost invisible ripple in space-time. A micro-debris collapse was a good, peaceful explanation. The trip continued. The outpost, Epsilon 7, was now a bright dot on the navigation screen. The mood on the harmonic accord was one of happy anticipation. They were bringing a new species into the light. On their final night before arrival, Una found Tay in the observation lounge again. I am glad it was you, she said, her voice soft. Many species, when they first meet us, are too loud. They try to impress. You listened. You are gentle. You are what we hoped to find in the stars. Tay felt a pang of guilt so sharp it surprised him. He thought of the silent warship shadowing their path, a tool of absolute violence they hoped never to use. He smiled at Una, but it felt weak. You are what we hoped to find too, Una. He was telling the truth, and that was what made the lie of omission feel so heavy. The Concorde offered a pure, shining future, but humanity had brought its past along for the ride, hiding it in the void just behind them. A silent, dark promise to protect this fragile new piece by any means necessary. The first contact was calm, but the calm, for the humans, was an active, careful, and heavily guarded thing. The docking bay of Outpost Epsilon 7 was not like a human port. There was no clang of metal, no shouting of orders, no smell of fuel. It was more like a grand, quiet cathedral. Soft, natural light came from high above. The air smelled of something clean, like ozone and fresh water. Hundreds of beings stood in a wide circle. They were of all shapes and sizes, tall and willowy, short and sturdy, covered in fur or scales or smooth skin. The only sound was a low, harmonious hum that seemed to come from the station itself. Mira and Tay walked beside Ambassador Collar. They had changed into slightly more formal gray jackets, but they still looked plain next to the flowing robes and intricate jewelry of the Concorde delegates. The eyes of the assembly were on them. The feeling was not of suspicion, but of warm, overwhelming curiosity. It was like being gently hugged by a crowd. A platform stood in the center of the bay. Kaler led them onto it. The soft hum faded into a respectful silence. Una stood at the edge of the crowd, her luminous eyes wide with excitement. Kyler stepped forward. His voice, amplified, was gentle, but carried to every corner of the vast space. Translated speech flowed into small devices held by the assembly. Friends of the Concorde, he began. For centuries, we have reached into the dark, hoping to find not just new life, but new wisdom. Today, our hope is answered. He turned and gestured to Myra and Tay. From the world they call Earth, the Terrans have come. They have spoken with calm voices. They have listened with open minds. In our first meeting, they showed us that the universe holds not just wonder, but also kindness. He spoke of the peaceful talks aboard the harmonic accord. He spoke of shared science and respectful questions. The crowd seemed to sway with approval. The air was thick with a shared dream coming true. Therefore, Connor said, his voice rising with happy formality, it is my deepest joy, acting with the full authority of the Concord Assembly, to extend to the Terran people an invitation to join our common cause, to add their voice to our chorus of peace, to walk with us into a future built on understanding. A wave of soft, chirping, chiming applause moved through the crowd. It was a beautiful sound. Tay felt a lump in his throat. This was it, the pinnacle of everything their diplomats had dreamed of for decades. Acceptance, safety, community. Kalar turned to Mira, his feathers arranged in a joyful pattern. Ambassador Myra, do you, representing your people, accept this offer of fellowship? Mira stepped forward. She looked small on the big platform. She looked out at the sea of peaceful, hopeful faces. For a moment, her own calm mask softened. She saw the future Yuna had described, a future of endless learning, of shared gardens, of quiet starlight. She opened her mouth to speak. The first sound that came out was not her voice dot. It was a deep, shuddering boom that vibrated through the deck plates. The gentle lights flickered. The harmonious hum of the station twisted into a sudden, screeching alarm. Panic, silent and stunned at first, ripped through the assembly. The crowd shifted, a ripple of confusion and fear. On the far side of the bay, a massive main view screen flickered to life. The star field outside was gone. Replacing it was a ship dot. It was all sharp angles and jagged edges, like a rock broken into cruel pieces. Its surface was a dull, hungry red. It bristled with obvious, brutal weapons. It hung right outside the station, blotting out the stars. It was easily 10 times the size of the harmonic accord. A communication window flashed on the screen. The face that appeared was nightmare made real. It was insect-like, with a hard black carapace and multifaceted eyes that held no light. A sharp mandible clicked as a harsh, clicking language played. Then the translator worked, delivering the words in a flat, terrible tone. Outpost Epsilon 7, we are the K-Thrak. You sit on resources we require. Your biological components are also useful. Power down your defenses. Open your docking bays. Prepare for harvest. You have 5 of your minutes to comply. Resistance will be processed as material damage. You will be repaired. Later, the message ended. The silent dread in the bay turned into audible terror. Soft cries and frantic clicks filled the air. The Concord was a society of philosophers and scientists. They had no defense for this. Their strength of unity was an idea. The K-Thrak ship was a very real, very heavy piece of metal aimed at their heart. Ambassador Kaler was frozen, his feathers pressed flat against his body in shock and shame. He turned to Myra, his large eyes wide with despair. I am so sorry, he stammered, the formality gone, replaced by pure horror. This should not. We have no, please. You must take your shuttle. Go, tell your people. Tell them we are not always this weak. He thought the Terrans were like him. He thought they were helpless. Myra did not look at the monster on the screen. She looked at Kaler as despair. She looked at Yuna in the crowd, who was holding on to a pillar, her body trembling. She looked at Tay, whose face had gone pale, but was set in a hard line. She recognized the gentle human diplomat was gone. In her place stood something else. Her posture became straight, solid, like a soldier at attention. Her calm eyes turned cold, focused. The change was so sudden, it cut through Kaler's panic. "Tay," she said, and her voice was different. It was clear, commanding, and carried across the now quiet bay. "Signal the Guardian." Tay moved. His hand went to his wrist. He pressed a hidden button on the simple band of his watch. Collar stared, uncomprehending. What are you doing?" Myra finally looked at the K-Thrak ship on the view screen. There was no fear in her face. There was only a cool, detached assessment. "You shared your principles with us, Ambassador," she said, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Now we will share one of ours." She paused and spoke the old words not as a quote, but as a simple statement of fact. "Speak softly, but carry a big stick." Before Kaler could process the strange words, before the K-Thrak S5-minute countdown could reach 4, the space next to the Predator ship changed dot. It was not a jump. There was no flash of light. It was as if a piece of the void itself decided to become solid. Space twisted, wrinkled, and then smoothed out, revealing what had been there all along. The Terran warship was a slab of dark metal. It had no bright colors, no proud banners. It was shaped for one thing only. It made the K-Thrak raider look like an angry child's toy. It was massive, imposing, and utterly silent. Along its side, in simple white letters, was its name, Tien Smalius. And below that, a short phrase in Terran script, Pro Teger, to protect. A new voice filled the comms of the station, and, undoubtedly, the bridge of the K-Thrak ship. It was a man's voice, deep, calm, and as cold as deep space. Ka-Thrak vessel. "This is Commander June of the Terran Solar Navy. You have issued a threat of violence against a diplomatic station harboring Terran citizens. You will stand down immediately. Power down all weapons and engines. This is your only warning." The silence in the docking bay was total. Every alien eye was fixed on the view screen, shifting from the nightmare ship to the dark giant that had appeared from nowhere. Yuna's hand was over her mouth. Kaler could not breathe. On the screen, the K-Thrak ship did not stand down. Its weapons glowed with a sickly green light. It had never been told no before. It fired. The silence in the docking bay shattered. A collective gasp, a ripple of pure terror, went through the crowd as the K-Thrak weapons flared. Green energy, vicious and hungry, lanced across the void towards the station. This was it. The violent end the Concord had always feared, but never truly prepared for dot. It never reached them dot in front of the outpost. Space itself seemed to shimmer. A pale blue hexagon of light, the size of a small moon, flickered into existence for less than a second. The K-Thrak S-energy bolts struck it and vanished, absorbed without a sound, without a ripple. The only evidence was a faint, dissipating heat haze on the shield. The Terran warship, the Malleus, had not moved. Inside the bay, the stunned silence returned, heavier than before. Eyes were no longer on the K-Thrak, but on the dark, silent Guardian. On the two humans standing on the platform. Myra's face was a mask of cool focus. Tay watched the screen, his jaw tight. Commander Chun's voice came again, unchanged. It was not angry. It was not loud. It was simply final. Warning acknowledged. Hostile action confirmed. Engaging defensive measures. The Malleus moved. It was not a dramatic charge. It was a slow, deliberate turn, presenting its broadside to the K-Thrak raider. Along its dark flank, a single panel slid open. A weapon emerged. It was not a cannon. It looked more like a long, slender needle, glowing with a contained, fierce blue light at its tip. On the K-Thrak ship, the response was a frenzy. The Predator, confused by the failed attack, now fired everything. A storm of green bolts and physical projectiles streamed towards the Terran ship. The Malleus ignored them. Its point defense systems came alive, a constellation of tiny, precise flashes of light around its hull. Each flash intercepted a K-Thrak round or bolt, detonating them harmlessly kilometers away. It looked less like a battle, and more like a sophisticated filter, cleaning the space of pollution. The single blue beam fired dot, it was not an explosive blast. It was a line of pure, surgical energy. It lasted for 2 seconds. It did not hit the K-Thrak's hull. It passed directly through the spaces between the ship's jagged spines. On the view screen, the effect was immediate and horrifyingly clean. The entire forward weapon array of the K-Thrak ship, its menacing claws, simply separated from the main body. A moment later, the engine nacelles at its rear did the same, sliced off as neatly as a surgeon removing a tumor. Glowing cuts sealed instantly, cauterized by the beam's immense heat. The K-Thrak ship was now just a blocky, dark middle section. It drifted, powerless. All its lights went out. It was no longer a threat. It was just debris. The entire engagement had taken 12 seconds. The silence in the docking bay was profound. It was the silence of a worldview being dismantled and rebuilt in less than a minute. The Concorde had just witnessed something they had no frame for. This was not a brawl. It was not a war. It was an execution of force so precise, so overwhelming, it felt less like violence and more like a natural law being enforced. Ambassador Kaler was trembling. He looked from the drifting K-Thrak hulk to the Malleus, which was now turning its dark bulk slowly, presenting its undamaged side to the station once more. He finally looked at Mira. Her posture had relaxed slightly, but the iron was still in her spine. She met his gaze. You. Kaler's voice was a dry whisper. You had a warship. You had it with you the whole time. Yes, Mira said. There was no apology in her tone. Cloaked, undetectable. Yes. Why? The word was not an accusation, but a plea for understanding from a broken reality. Mira stepped closer to him, her voice low but clear. Because the universe is not only full of listeners, Ambassador. We prefer calm. We desire peace more than you can possibly know. But our history taught us that desire is not enough. Peace is not a passive state. It is an active choice. And sometimes, to protect that choice for those who cannot protect it themselves, you must be willing to be the hard hand that enforces it. On the view screen, a new window opened. A human face appeared, a woman with short-cropped black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Commander Jun, the K-Thrak vessel is neutralized. No life signs lost. Hull integrity is breached, but contained. They are alive, just in a very dark room, awaiting instructions. Her voice was crisp, professional. Her name tag read Sue Tactical. Chun's voice replied, Thank you, Lieutenant Sue. Hold position. Monitor. Do not approach unless they sneeze. There was the faintest hint of dry humor in the command. A smaller shuttle, angular and gray, detached from the Malleus and began moving towards the outpost's docking bay. It was marked with the same simple white lettering. The crowd in the bay was starting to stir, not with panic now, but with a hushed, awe-filled murmur. They were looking at Mira and Tay, not as gentle scholars, but as something utterly alien and profoundly powerful. Yuna's face was a mix of shock, fear, and a dawning, terrible comprehension. The Terran shuttle docked with a soft thump. The bay doors opened. 3 figures walked out. In the lead was a man with a stern, lined face and close-cropped gray hair. He wore a simple black uniform with no decoration except a small silver insignia. This was Commander Jun. Behind him was Lieutenant Sue, her eyes scanning the bay with a tactical efficiency that felt foreign in this soft space. The third was a younger man, Min, who carried a simple data slate and had a more open, calm expression. Jun walked straight to the platform. He ignored the hundreds of staring aliens. He stopped in front of Myra and gave a small, sharp nod. Ambassador. Situation contained. Well done, Commander, Myra said. Then she turned back to Kaler, who seemed smaller than he had just minutes ago. Ambassador Kaler, may I present Commander Jun of the TNS Malleus, and our cultural attache, Min. Jun gave a short, respectful nod to Kaler. Ambassador, our apologies for the dramatic entrance. It was not our preferred method. Kaler could only stare. The human soldier's presence was like a cold wind in the warm bay. Min, the attache, stepped forward with a gentle smile that was somehow more unsettling than Chun's sternness. Ambassador, Min said, his voice softer. We have much to explain. Our history is complicated. We have brought files, context. We would like to share it with you, if you are still willing to talk. The offer hung in the air. The invitation to join the Concord was still there, but it was different now. It was not an offer from a wise elder to a promising child. It was an offer from a gentle gardener who had just discovered the quiet neighbor they invited for tea keeps a plasma rifle behind the door. Not for use on the gardener. For use on the wolves outside the gate. The first contact was over. Now came the harder part, the second contact, the one where the truth was revealed. The humans had spoken softly, and now everyone had seen the unimaginable size of their stick. The docking bay of Outpost Epsilon 7 slowly emptied. The Concord citizens were led away by soothing attendants, their minds reeling. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was shocked and heavy. Only a small group remained in a viewing lounge overlooking the bay. Ambassador Kaler, Yuna, Mira, Tay, and the newly arrived Terran's Commander Jun, Lieutenant Sue, and cultural attache Min. The Kathrak ship hung dead in the viewport. The TN's Malleus sat beside it, a dark, silent monument. It was a picture that would change the Concord forever. Kyler finally spoke, his voice rough. You lied to us. We omitted, Myra corrected gently, but firmly. We showed you who we aspire to be. The part of us that wants gardens, not graves. That part is real, Ambassador. And that? Kaler pointed a trembling finger at the warship. That, said Commander Jun, his arms behind his back, is the reason the part that wants gardens is still alive. They are not separate things. Min stepped forward, holding his data slate. Ambassador, with your permission, I would like to show you something. Not a weapon schematic. A history lesson. Kyler nodded, too tired to refuse. Min tapped the slate. A simple timeline appeared. It showed Earth's history. The scale of wars grew from small conflicts to global ones. Images of ancient battlefields and trenches, then cities in ruins flashed by. The numbers of the dead were listed. They were numbers the Concord, who had never known planet-wide war, could barely comprehend. For thousands of years, Min explained, his voice quiet and sad, this was our normal. We were our own harvesters. We broke our own world, over and over. We almost ended ourselves, more than once. The timeline reached a point labeled First Unified Government, then First Exodus, then a long period labeled the Quiet War. What is the Quiet War? Yuna asked, her voice small. The war we never stopped fighting, John said from the window, not turning around. But not against each other. Against the idea that the universe is only, and always, a hungry place. We pushed out, and we found others. Some were peaceful. Many were not. Some were like the Kathrak. We learned we had a simple choice. Become victims, become like them, or become guardians. Min advanced the timeline. It showed a simple, iconic image. A spear breaking. Then a sword breaking. Then a gun breaking. Finally, an image of a cloaking device schematic. And beside it, the phrase, Si vis pacem para bellum. It means if you want peace, prepare for war, Min translated. We hated the phrase. We fought it. But the universe taught us it was a law, like gravity. So we changed. We did not build our war machine to conquer. We built it to end wars. Not by shouting louder, but by making the cost of starting a war with us, or anyone under our protection, so absolute, so final, that no rational being would ever try. He looked at Kyler. You use the light of your unity to blind aggressors. We use the shadow of our certainty to deter them. We speak softly so we never have to shout. And we carry a big stick so big, we hope we never have to lift it. Today, we had to lift it. To protect you. Kaler was silent for a long time. He looked at Una, who was staring at the Terrans with new eyes, not just as gentle listeners, but as scarred veterans from a history of fire. So this, Guardian, you hide it because you are ashamed? No, Myra said quickly. We hide it because its power is a poison. The sight of it changes things. It creates fear or greed or dependency. We showed you our open hands first. That was the truth. This, she gestured to the Malleus, is also the truth. It is the shield that lets the hands stay open. Lieutenant Sue spoke for the first time, her voice factual. The K-Threk Raider is disabled. Its crew is alive, contained. They are receiving medical telemetry from us. They are confused. They have never been defeated. They have certainly never been defeated without their enemy taking a single scratch. This will be a significant data point for them. The way she said it, a significant data point, was chilling. This was not vengeance. It was an experiment in applied deterrence. What happens now? Kaler asked, the weight of leadership returning. To us? To this? He meant the Concorde's dream. That, Mara said, is your choice. Our offer to join you, to learn from you, is still real. More real than ever. We need your way. Your peace is not our weakness. It is our goal. But we can offer you something in return. Safety, Jun stated, turning from the window. His eyes met Culler's, not as subordinates, as partners. You tend the garden. We will stand watch at the wall. You will never see us, unless the wolves break through, and we will ensure they never do. It was a profound, terrifying offer. The Concorde would not have to change its laws, its art, its gentle soul. But it would have to accept that their safety was now guaranteed by a neighbor whose basement contained a dragon. Una stepped forward. She looked at Tay. When you drank with us, when you listened, you were not pretending? Tay shook his head, his eyes earnest. No, Una, that was the best moment of my life. This, he sighed, glancing at the warship, this is the price we pay to have moments like that. To ensure there are moments like that for others. Kaler stood up. He walked to the viewport, looking at the two ships, the broken Predator and the silent, unmarked Guardian. He thought of his people's fear. He thought of their art, their music, their fragile, beautiful peace. We must take this to the full assembly, he said finally. It will be a difficult conversation. Many will be afraid of you. We know, Mira said. We are also afraid. We are afraid of becoming the thing we guard against. That is why we need your light, to remind us what we are guarding for. Kaler turned to them. He saw not monsters, and not simple friends. He saw a species that had stared into the abyss of its own nature and the universe's cruelty, and had made a brutal, practical, and deeply moral calculation. They had chosen to be the shield, so others could remain the heart. "We will talk," Kaler said. The formal acceptance was gone, replaced by a weary, honest resolve. "Min, you will share your history with our scholars. Commander Jun, your ship will stay cloaked and away," Jun finished. "We are comfortable in the dark. We prefer it." As the meeting ended, Yuna approached Tay. "Your big stick," she said. "It is very big." "It has to be," Tay replied. "Otherwise, the wolves just think it's a noise." She managed a small, understanding smile. It was different now. The innocence was gone. But perhaps something stronger could be built in its place. Later, alone in a quiet corridor, Mira stood with Jun by a small viewport. The Malleus was already gone, vanished back into its cloak. "Do you think they'll have us?" Myra asked quietly. Jun watched the stars. "They'd be fools not to. And they're not fools. They're just unused to the dark." He paused. "We showed them the monster in the closet. And then we showed them we were a bigger monster on their side. It's a lot to process." "We showed them the truth," Mira corrected. "That in this universe, calm is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of overwhelming protection. First contact was calm, until they needed to see why." Jun gave a single slow nod. "And now the real work begins. The long, quiet watch." He looked at her. "Go be their friend, Ambassador. Their gentle, listening friend. That's your part of the job. We'll handle the rest." Myra looked out at the peaceful stars, knowing what lay hidden among them. Not a threat. A promise. A terrible, silent promise of safety, bought with a readiness for violence that hoped, more than anything, to never be used again. The Terrans had found the peace they sought, and they had brought their own unshakable calm with them.